One of the most common reasons people fail to stay healthy is not that they lack motivation or resources, it's that they're chasing a finish line that doesn't exist. They approach health like a project with a start and end date. They say things like, I just want to lose 20 pounds, or I'll eat clean until the wedding, or I'm doing this challenge for 30 days. And while there's nothing wrong with setting goals, the mindset behind them is where the problem begins. Because when health becomes a short-term mission rather than a long-term identity, it becomes unsustainable. Let's think about this in terms of psychology. When we treat health as something we do temporarily, we subconsciously tell ourselves that we're only healthy for a season. That once the goal is achieved, we can relax, reward ourselves, or return to old patterns. And we often do. Not because we failed, but because we never truly changed who we were. We changed our behavior, but not our identity. You can stick to a diet for 90 days. You can go to the gym every day for a month. But if deep down you still see yourself as someone who struggles with food or avoids exercise, then that version of you, the internal identity, will eventually pull you back into familiar habits. Your external transformation will always collapse under the weight of an internal contradiction. This is why real lasting health transformation doesn't start with what you eat or how you move. It starts with who you believe you are. And that's not philosophy. That's neuroscience. Your brain is constantly trying to act in a way that aligns with your self-image. If you see yourself as a healthy person, then going for a walk, skipping soda, choosing vegetables, that all feels consistent. But if you still see yourself as someone who is trying to get healthy, then each action feels like effort, like you're pretending. And pretending is exhausting. So the key here is not to focus solely on the outcome, like weight loss or lower blood pressure or fitting into old clothes. The key is to focus on embodying a new identity. Start telling yourself, I'm the kind of person who takes care of my body. I'm someone who values movement. I nourish myself because I respect myself. It might feel strange at first, even untrue, but every small choice you make in alignment with that identity strengthens it. Every healthy decision becomes a vote for the person you're becoming. I once worked with a man named Carlos. He had tried every program imaginable, keto, fasting, boot camps, you name it, but nothing ever stuck for more than a few months. What finally shifted everything for him was this one simple question: what kind of man do you want to be 5 years from now? And his answer wasn't about weight or muscle. It was about how he wanted to live. He said, I want to be the kind of man who plays soccer with his grandkids and wakes up with energy. That vision changed everything. Because now his habits weren't about sacrifice or restriction. They were about becoming the man he already saw inside himself. He started small, daily walks, cutting sugar, getting to bed earlier. Each day, those choices became less about discipline and more about alignment. Because now they matched the identity he had claimed. That's what makes this shift so powerful. When you adopt the identity of a healthy person, your habits stop feeling like tasks. They become natural extensions of who you are. And that removes the internal tension that makes most people quit. You're no longer battling between who you want to be and who you think you are. You're simply living in integrity. Philosophically, this mirrors the work of thinkers like Aristotle, who taught that we become virtuous not through belief alone, but through habitual action. You don't become brave by thinking about bravery, you become brave by doing brave things. Likewise, you don't become healthy by simply wanting health, you become healthy by living in a way that embodies health, even in small daily ways. This shift from outcome to identity is the difference between effort and ease, between short bursts and lifelong momentum. It's not about reaching your goal. It's about becoming the kind of person for whom health is a way of life, not a phase of life. So the next time you catch yourself saying, I'll just do this until I reach my goal, pause. Ask yourself instead, what kind of person am I becoming through this process? Because in the end, it's not the diet or the program that changes you. It's the identity you're building, brick by brick, with every choice you make. Transformation that lasts isn't about chasing a goal. It's about living out a truth. Make your health part of who you are, not just something you do. And you won't just achieve your goals, you'll outgrow them. Another reason most people fail at staying healthy, and one that's often overlooked, is this. They try to change everything at once. There's this deep, almost primal urge in us to flip the switch, to declare, that's it, I'm changing my life starting tomorrow. And so we make a massive list. Eat clean, quit sugar, cut carbs, go to the gym 5 times a week, meditate, journal, sleep early, no screens, no soda, no skipping, no excuses. And for a few days, maybe even a couple of weeks, it feels exhilarating, like a complete reboot, until it doesn't, until it becomes overwhelming, and eventually it collapses. The problem isn't the desire to improve, it's the scope of change we demand from ourselves all at once. Psychologically, this speaks to what's known as ego depletion. Our ability to make disciplined decisions is not unlimited. When we stack too many demands on ourselves simultaneously, especially unfamiliar ones, we exhaust our cognitive energy. The brain craves simplicity, familiarity, and rhythm. When you change too much too quickly, you throw your internal system into chaos. Your environment hasn't caught up, your habits haven't stabilized, and your mind starts sending signals of stress and resistance. So instead of transformation, you experience fatigue. Instead of progress, you feel failure. And that's when the voice in your head returns. Maybe you're just not cut out for this. But what if the issue wasn't your ability, but your approach? Let me offer you a different path, one rooted in both neuroscience and ancient wisdom. Mastery through minimalism. Start small. Start with one habit, just one. Something almost too easy to fail. Something you can repeat every single day with minimal resistance. It could be walking for 10 minutes, drinking a full glass of water upon waking, stretching before bed, a 5-minute breathing practice. These are not glamorous changes, but they are foundational ones. And here's the philosophical beauty in this. Small acts done consistently reshape the self. They whisper to your subconscious, this is who I am now. And once that identity begins to take root, the actions start multiplying organically. Not because you're forcing yourself, but because your internal narrative is shifting. You're no longer trying to become healthy. You are someone who values health. I remember a woman named Priya who had struggled with weight and energy issues for years. Every January, she'd go all in. Meal prep, gym classes, supplements, the works, and by March, she'd burn out. This cycle had repeated for nearly a decade. But then one year, she did something radical. She committed to a single non-negotiable habit, walking outside for 15 minutes every morning. That's it. No diet changes, no workouts, just a walk. What happened next surprised even her. Within 2 weeks, she started craving better food. Not because she forced it, but because the fresh air and movement triggered a deeper awareness of her body. A few weeks later, she added a water routine, then a bedtime ritual. By summer, her lifestyle had transformed, not in a burst, but in a flow. Because she didn't try to do everything, she focused on one thing, and that one thing made the rest easier. This is what author James Clear calls the compound effect of habits. One small change acts like a domino. It sets off a cascade. But the first domino must be simple enough to stay upright. If you try to knock over too many at once or start with a massive one, it won't work. Precision beats force, always. There's a reason ancient philosophies, from Stoicism to Buddhism, emphasize incremental change. In Stoic practice, self-mastery isn't achieved through grand gestures, but through tiny moments of choice. In Buddhism, it's called the middle path. Sustainable balance over extremes. Our biology agrees. Our brains adapt best to small, repeatable actions that generate reward and clarity. So instead of asking, how can I change everything? Ask, what is one small thing I can change today that would make everything else easier? That question can reshape your trajectory more than any meal plan or challenge ever could. And here's what happens when you succeed at that one thing. You build trust with yourself. That trust becomes confidence. That confidence becomes momentum. And momentum, once it begins, carries a power far greater than any motivation you started with. Real health isn't built in a flurry of action. It's built in the quiet, often invisible repetition of small steps done with care and consistency. Over time, those steps become your foundation. And once that foundation is in place, you can build anything you want on top of it. So if you're tired of starting over, of burning out, of chasing extremes, maybe it's time to simplify. Choose less. Choose one. Master that. Then move forward. Because transformation isn't about doing everything. It's about doing something well and often until it changes who you are. Start with one thing and let that one thing transform everything. When we talk about health, most conversations begin and end with surface level behaviors. What to eat, how to exercise, how much to sleep. And while these are essential pieces of the puzzle, they're often not the root of the struggle. People know what they should be doing. The information is out there. But knowledge alone doesn't change behavior, because beneath every repeated unhealthy choice lies something deeper, something emotional, something psychological, something unresolved. This is the reason many people continue to sabotage their health, even when they desperately want to get better. They think they're battling bad habits, but in reality, they're fighting unprocessed emotions. Pain, loneliness, stress, fear, guilt, shame. These aren't just mental burdens. They're physiological triggers. They drive behavior. They shape cravings. They hijack the nervous system. Until we begin to understand that, we remain trapped in cycles we don't even fully understand. Let me give you an example. I once spoke with a woman in her 50s, let's call her Diane, who had been struggling with emotional eating for most of her adult life. She had tried every diet imaginable. She knew calories, macros, glycemic indexes, you name it. But every night, after putting her kids to bed, she would find herself alone in the kitchen, reaching for sugar, night after night. She wasn't hungry. She wasn't unaware. She was hurting. Food wasn't a source of nutrition. It was a numbing agent. It gave her comfort, predictability, even identity. That's not a willpower issue. That's an emotional wound. What we often fail to realize is that many of our health behaviors are strategies, not always conscious ones, but strategies nonetheless. They are ways to cope, to distract, to protect ourselves from pain that we haven't fully named or healed. And until we address that pain, until we create space to sit with it, process it, understand it, no plan or program will stick, because the root cause remains untouched. This is where health becomes more than a physical pursuit. It becomes a journey of self-awareness, and that requires courage. It requires us to stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what happened to me? That question opens a door. It invites compassion. It shifts us from judgment to curiosity, and curiosity is the beginning of healing. Modern psychology reinforces this. The science of trauma tells us that the body stores emotional pain, inflammation, fatigue, disrupted sleep, digestive issues. These aren't just signs of poor health. They're signs that the body is carrying unresolved stories, and food or alcohol or endless scrolling, these often become our way of escaping the discomfort of those stories. The irony is, we live in a culture that celebrates control. We're told to fix our bodies, tighten our routines, conquer our weaknesses. But healing isn't about control, it's about connection. It's about reconnecting with the parts of ourselves we've ignored or avoided. It's about allowing the body to feel what it needs to feel, so that it no longer needs to scream through symptoms. If you find yourself stuck in a loop, doing well for a while and then falling back, it's worth asking, what am I really trying to avoid? Is it loneliness? Is it grief? Is it anxiety? And once you name it, you begin to loosen its grip. You give yourself a chance to respond with care rather than with a craving. And that's the moment when healing begins. You don't have to fix it all at once. In fact, you shouldn't. But you can begin by creating small practices of emotional honesty. Journaling, therapy, honest conversations, quiet reflection. All of these can become tools for tuning in rather than tuning out. When you listen to your pain, it often whispers what it truly needs. And it's usually not more food or more rules. It's connection, safety, peace. One of the most powerful things I've ever heard was this: your body isn't the problem, it's the messenger. That hit me deeply, because so many people walk around thinking their body is betraying them, but often it's their body that's been carrying the emotional load that their heart never had permission to unpack. And this isn't just about emotion, it's about alignment. If your internal world is in conflict, if your mind and body and spirit are at odds, then health becomes a fight. But when you begin to bring them into harmony, even gently, your choices begin to feel more natural. You stop chasing health and start living it, because it flows from a place of inner congruence. So yes, move your body, eat nourishing foods, get good sleep, but don't forget to go deeper. Don't be afraid to sit with your emotions and ask what they're trying to teach you, because healing isn't just about what you do, it's about how well you listen. We don't overcome unhealthy behaviors by shaming them into submission. We transcend them by understanding what they were trying to protect us from. When we bring that understanding into the light, we no longer need to escape ourselves to feel safe. Sometimes the most powerful step toward lasting health isn't a new workout. It's an honest conversation with the parts of you that have been quietly waiting to be seen. A major reason people struggle to stay healthy, even when they know what to do and even when they've started strong, is that they underestimate the power of their environment. They focus so much on internal discipline, on pushing harder, resisting temptation, staying motivated, that they overlook the external forces shaping their choices every single day. But the truth is, your environment is either working for you or against you. And for most people, it's silently pulling them away from their goals. Think about this. We like to believe we make conscious, rational decisions about our health. But over 40% of our daily actions are habitual, done without deliberate thoughts. You don't choose what you reach for when you're tired. You default to what's easy, what's familiar, what's available. So if your kitchen is full of processed snacks, if your phone is next to your pillow, if your social circle normalizes unhealthy habits, then those surroundings are scripting your behavior, often more than your intentions are. This isn't weakness, it's design. Our brains are wired for efficiency. We follow the path of least resistance. So the more friction that exists between you and a healthy choice, the less likely you are to make it, especially when you're tired, stressed, or emotionally depleted. That's why changing your environment is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Let's take a simple example. If you want to drink more water, but the only thing visible on your desk is a cup of coffee or a soda, you're not setting yourself up for success. But place a large glass of water within arm's reach, and suddenly the healthy choice becomes the easy one. That's not about willpower. That's about alignment. I once worked with a young man named Amir who was trying to cut back on late night screen time. He kept telling himself he'd stop watching videos after 10 p.m., but he never did. Why? Because his phone was his alarm clock, his entertainment, his connection to the world, all in one. The real shift happened when he created a new setup, an actual alarm clock by the bed, a charging station in another room, and a wind down routine that replaced scrolling with reading. That change in his environment triggered a ripple effect. He started sleeping better, his energy improved, his cravings decreased, all because he adjusted the space around him to support who he wanted to become. This kind of change isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, but the cumulative effect is profound. Because when your surroundings reinforce your goals, staying healthy becomes less about resistance and more about rhythm. You're not constantly battling your instincts, you're flowing with them. And it's not just about your physical environment, it's also about your social environment. Who you spend time with matters. If your closest friends mock your healthy choices or constantly invite you into behaviors you're trying to shift away from, you're going to feel like you're swimming upstream. Not because they're bad people, but because energy is contagious. Norms are powerful. We are biologically wired to mirror the people around us. That's how we survived for millennia. So if you want to elevate your habits, you often need to elevate your company, or at least find pockets of support that align with your passion. This is why community matters so much, not just in terms of accountability, but in terms of identity. When you're surrounded by people who value growth, who take care of their bodies, who encourage you rather than question you, it reinforces the version of yourself you're trying to live into. It shifts the narrative from why you're doing that to let's do this together. One of the most common misconceptions in wellness is that success is about inner strength. But the deeper truth is success is often about external setup. And that setup starts with awareness. Start noticing what cues are shaping your daily behaviors. What triggers your stress eating? What time of day do you tend to skip movement? What items in your space pull you toward or away from health? Once you identify the patterns, you can begin to design around them. This is a philosophy rooted in both ancient wisdom and modern neuroscience. Ancient monks didn't rely on willpower to live disciplined lives. They designed monastic environments that supported simplicity, mindfulness, and routine. Today's behavioral scientists say the same thing. Change the cue, change the behavior. And if you can make the healthy choice easier than the unhealthy one, even by just a fraction, you increase your odds of success exponentially. So if you've been trying to force better habits without changing your surroundings, you're working twice as hard for half the results. Don't make health a battle, make it the default. Set up your life so that healthy decisions don't require daily heroism. Let your environment do the heavy lifting Because in the end, your space shapes your choices, and your choices shape your life. Adjust the environment, and you realign the entire story. One of the most underestimated reasons why people fail to stay healthy is because they rely far too heavily on motivation and not nearly enough on systems. We've all felt that jolt of inspiration after watching a powerful documentary, hearing a moving story, or looking at ourselves in the mirror and deciding, that's it, I'm changing. But as powerful as motivation can be in that moment, it's fleeting, it's emotion driven. And emotions by nature rise and fall. If your entire health journey is built on waiting for the next motivational spike, then you're building your house on sand. Motivation feels good, it gives us the illusion of progress, but it doesn't give us structure. It doesn't give us consistency. And consistency, not intensity, is the secret ingredient to lasting health. Let's step back and look at this from a psychological standpoint. Motivation is tied to your limbic system, your emotional brain. It reacts to inspiration, novelty, and urgency. But when life gets stressful, when time gets tight, when emotions dip, the limbic system prioritizes survival. That's when your habits, your default behaviors kick in. If those defaults haven't been deliberately designed, you'll fall back on convenience, not intention. This is where systems become essential. A system is simply a repeatable structure that removes the need for daily decision making. It's not sexy, it's not exciting, but it's sustainable. A system says every morning at 7 a.m. I walk for 20 minutes. A system says I meal prep on Sundays so I don't have to think about lunch during the week. A system doesn't ask if you feel like being healthy, it's already decided that for you. I once worked with a man named Faisal, who had a long history of starting and stopping health routines. He'd go all in for a few weeks, buy the supplements, join the gym, track every bite, but then work would get busy, stress would creep in, and he'd spiral. When we sat down and unpacked his patterns, the problem was clear. He was chasing moments of motivation instead of building mechanisms of support. So we shifted focus. Instead of asking, what do you want to do when you're motivated? We asked, what can you still do when you're not? That one question changed everything. We built systems that were small, repeatable, and nearly immune to his mood. A simple meal rotation, a 10-minute evening walk, a digital calendar that reminded him to stretch at his desk. It wasn't glamorous, but it was effective. And over time, it became automatic. He didn't need motivation anymore. He needed a plan, and he followed it. Here's the philosophical insight. Discipline is not about force, it's about structure. Just like a river flows more powerfully when it has banks to guide it, your energy flows more effectively when you have systems that channel your intentions into action. Even spiritually, there's a pattern here. Ancient traditions understood the power of ritual, structured repetition, whether it was prayer at sunrise, fasting on certain days, or moments of stillness before rest. Those systems weren't random. They were intentional containers for wisdom, rhythm, and alignment. Today, we can learn from that. A modern health ritual doesn't have to be religious, it just has to be repeated. And there's neuroscience behind this too. The more you repeat a behavior in a specific context, the stronger the neural pathway becomes. Eventually it becomes so deeply wired that it bypasses effort. That's how brushing your teeth became second nature. That's how habits work. The problem is too many people are trying to fight unhealthy habits with motivation alone instead of replacing them with healthier routines supported by design. If you're constantly starting over, constantly feeling like you failed when your motivation disappears, understand this. You haven't failed, you just haven't built your system yet. And that system doesn't have to be complicated, it just has to be clear. Set triggers, create rituals, reduce friction, make the healthy choice easier than the unhealthy one. Let repetition do the rest. So ask yourself, what are my systems? When do I move? What do I eat when I'm busy? How do I reset after a stressful day? If you don't have answers to these questions, start there. Don't wait for the next wave of motivation. Build something you can count on, even on the days you don't feel like it. Because here's the truth. Your health doesn't depend on how motivated you are. It depends on what you put in place for when you're not. Systems are the silent architecture behind every lasting transformation. Don't build your future on feelings. Build it on a framework that holds even when your feelings change. Motivation may ignite the spark, but systems keep the fire burning.